So, welcome to the Blue Swan. I'm your host, John Connor, and today we have Martin Percy, who is a BAFTA, Emmy, and 11 times Webby Award winner, specializing in interactive video. And so, please tell us whatever you'd like.
Hi, my name's Martin Percy. I make videos with interactivity in the video, usually to try to empower people to do something. If you're going to make an interactive film, there are three reasons you might have for doing it. One is to educate people and empower them. Another is to entertain them, and another is to kind of for e-commerce or something like that. There are three peer-reviewed medical research papers done on my work about my films, which train people how to do CPR using interactive video. And they found that the results are extremely persuasive. It's never happened that anyone's come out at the end and said, I don't see what the point of the interactivity is. Why don't you just make a linear film instead? And same with my CPR training films. No one has ever said, oh, why don't you just make a linear film? That would be better. And so that's why I put interactivity into films and hope to continue doing so. An app like TikTok or Instagram is showing a fundamental user behavior about video in the age of the internet, where the user is watching for a bit, then interacting, then watching, then interacting, then watching, then interacting. For me, that's natural behavior in the age of the internet. Users on TikTok and Instagram are displaying natural user behavior. What I'm trying to do with my interactive films is to harness that in a way which actually teaches them something, or empowers them to do something, or enlightens them about something like AI.
I think it's important that you mentioned both social media interactivity and then sort of AI as a pending industrial revolution. Back in 2019, the neural networks are essentially the pipelines that the oil runs through. And so within the realm of interactive video, some of the computational and probabilistic logic from game and choice theory plays into both the video design and the interactivity. And so if you don't mind, would you be willing to sort of touch on some of the logic and the design choices you made behind differing genres in interactive video? And that could be, animal selection in Vuri, or it could be how you design emotional appeal and interactive workflows in some of the videos for CPR training and cardiac arrest, or sort of sensitivity training and crisis management for Uber.
Obviously, what someone like Jack Ma is looking for, or any of the social media giants, is they're looking for kind of gigantic scale interactions, and they're trying to build a social graph. What people are interested in, what the relationships are between the people, da da da, all that stuff, as you know. So with my stuff, it's all much more small scale, and it's much more based on trying to create a forms of interaction which are dramatically successful and emotionally engaging. And the fundamental way I come up with interactions is thinking like this. So lots of filmmakers think, oh, well, I'm trying to tell a story, right? But then there's a problem if you're making interactive films, which is over history, the vast majority of stories are not interactive. So, how do you make an interactive film? When I make my films, I don't think of them as stories. I think of them as a model of real life, because stories are not interactive, but real life is always interactive. Viri, for example. Viri is an interactive set of interactive films that I made with Fountain Digital Labs, which is trying to give children and to some extent adults the fairy tale sense that they are interacting with real animals. And so we filmed footage with real animals in a zoo, huge zoo in the UAE, and on location in Kenya, as well as a couple of other places. But so, okay, how do you design an emotionally satisfying interaction with a real animal, bearing in mind that, for the sake of argument, you're going with my thing of you're trying to make it like a model of real life. In real life, what does an animal want from you as a human? Food. We designed a form of interaction where you had the fairy tale sense that you were giving the animal food. We set up the camera. We would literally drop a piece of physical meat in front of the camera, and then we would go away for 2 hours, having set it up in the vicinity of lions. And then we would come back 2 hours later, and we picked up this footage of a lion. So what we did in the edit was put that together. So the interaction, in this case, this was for PlayStation VR. The interaction was shake your controller in PlayStation VR. That would make the meat drop down, clunk, in video. This is not an effect. It was a real piece of meat. And then a little while later, a lion would come in, sniff the meat that you had presented to the lion. And then, in fact, in that case, the lion wasn't interested in the meat, so it bit the camera, discovered that the camera was not edible, and then went away. The logic of the question there was to create a model of real life, and the interaction was satisfying because it felt like something you would do in real life. Similarly, with all these CPR films, we build a model of a real life cardiac arrest emergency, and we know the right thing that you should be doing at each stage. And so we give you the choice between a wrong thing to do and a right thing to do. To make it dramatic, we make the wrong thing as close as possible to the right thing, so it's difficult. And especially, what we love is places where it's counterintuitive, because some stages of CPR are not what you would expect. And that's where we give you a wrong answer, which seems much more likely to be true than the actual right answer. So what we're doing there is we're doing that to build up choices which are dramatic and exciting and sort of feel right. Now, but the problem is this building a vast network of data that we could sell to people because, as you say, data is the oil of the 21st century? Tragically not. This sort of data is not particularly useful to anyone, but it's interesting and it's fun and it makes the film go well. But it's not really particularly profitable or useful for to sell to third parties. Now, on a bigger scale, probably the most famous interactive film of recent years is a film called Bandersnatch from Netflix as part of the Black Mirror series. And there were sort of urban fairy tales that the choices in Bandersnatch were somehow being sold to vast corporate entities so that they could profit off it. I think that was all just a fairy tale. And obviously, you've got all these marketing people agonizing over how can we get our response rate, 0.5% higher from this ad on Instagram. Well, I tell you right now how you can make your response rate 50% higher, not 0.5%. You can create choices which are emotionally satisfying within the video. The moment all the ads on Instagram, you've got a linear video or a static image, and at the bottom, you've got the most boring possible button, which is just like a more info button that you hit to jump to a web page where you actually interact and maybe buy something. I do not understand why. Imagine you have, attractive person X looks you in the eye, asks you a question, holds up, product A and product B, which do you like the look of more? I reckon, even such a crashingly simple and crude ad like that, I think you would get a vast increase in response. Also, then you would have a whole new type of data, which out of product A or product B, which did people on Instagram like more? If you've got 100,000 people responding, then that becomes a whole new form of data.
And that's largely because a lot of the tracking processes and sort of the probabilistic logic of sort of user tracing and sort of content generation in terms of user action on social media that's interactive behind the scenes, in the sense that there are a bunch of AI algorithms tracking and redirecting clicks and whatever the mouse cursor kind of hovers over. But they don't allow interactive videos you can click on. And so, in terms of AI and interactive video, so you're doing both at the moment, and you're also working on a set of videos for Google DeepMind. And so, while not a social media company per se, they are very, very prominent in this space. And so, if you don't mind, I would love to hear a little bit more about sort of your process of designing and directing.
AI is a milestone in human history. Its consequences are impossible to calculate. At the moment, the decisions about AI and what it should be, what it should do, are being made by a tiny number of people, almost a handful of people, mostly in Silicon Valley, though one of them is in London quite a lot. Most people, it's often portrayed as, are you scared about AI or are you excited about AI? I found that almost everyone is both scared and excited. A few people are only scared and a few people are only excited. Most people are both. It's not an either or thing. And that certainly includes me, because most people think, well, there's potentially this huge downside. On the other hand, potentially there's a big upside. And almost everyone agrees in the AI basic sessions it's not going to go away. This is part of our life now. We weren't expecting it necessarily, but it's here. And even if we're not interested in it, it's interested in us, and it is going to change our lives and our kids' lives and the lives of everyone we know. I have had a number of projects that I've been trying to make for many years, which were just too expensive, too difficult. It is surprisingly difficult getting funding for films which teach people how to save other people's lives. You would have thought, I remember way back in about 2003 when I started attempting to do these things, that everyone would want to fund such a film. But no, almost no one wants to fund such a film. Using traditional methods to film something like CPR is pretty straightforward, but getting funding for that is still a big challenge. But there is a whole bunch of other life-saving emergencies, which I call the deadly dozen, which is 12 other emergencies where, just as with CPR, a layperson with no real medical experience or training can save lives with these 12 emergencies, provided they just have a little bit of training, which we can give them with an interactive film. So one of these films that I most wanted to do was fire safety. If you're trapped in a fire, what do you do? How do you get out? What should you be doing? And of course, thinking about that naturally makes people prepare better. But it was always going to be impossible to make, because shooting people close to fire is really, really dangerous. And to do it right, it's very expensive. However, with the advent of AI generated video, it's become really quite easy to make really good looking videos of fire and put people right next to that fire because they're AI generated. And so I got the opportunity to do a bit of work with Google DeepMind. They wanted to do an experiment related to some interesting new projects that they've got. So I managed to persuade them that we should do an interactive film about fire safety. And I'm still working on that. It's called Flashover. I hope it will be coming out soon. But I would say that there are some use cases where AI generated video can do something which would be basically impossible to do otherwise, and where they have a utility, social utility, beyond mere entertainment. And I would say Flashover will be exactly that. Even before it's been released, I know 3 people who have checked their smoke alarms after watching some of the footage from Flashover, and one person who changed her order for a carpet from a nylon carpet to a wool carpet because the film made her paranoid about fire safety. She's visiting the Titanic. These are absolutely charming, very educational, impossible to shoot traditionally. The budget you would need for the Roman Empire one would be like the budget of Gladiator. But obviously, Gladiator only gets made because people want to follow Russell Crowe and his kind of emotional battle to do X, Y, and Z. So I think that's another example where I think we're going to get some charming examples of AI generated video that do a great job. And I stand right behind those.
And so jumping back to what you mentioned about the scenes with fire and sort of filming that with AI instead of an actual set, either due to both safety and budgetary constraints, is actually very important because, a lot of people used to talk about how you could watch a video and you'd look at some of the fire, you look at a car explosion and be like, oh, that's CGI. And so now with the AI generated video content, it's no longer CGI. It's all generated as one, and so it's not generated as an overlay to augment the existing video, which has streamlined a lot of effects ranging from fire to water to smoke. With that being said, like, can you touch on some of the discrepancies between human generated content and then AI generated content, AI content generated by humans, and the boundaries of how you see that affecting both corporate and indie film development, as well as a lot of the awards categories, because there are now categories for use of AI in film, and even the Oscars are talking about the potential for, like best AI actor, etc.
Demis Hassabis, for example, smart guy, charming guy, brilliant guy, reckons that it'll be 10 times the impact of the Industrial Revolution, but 10 times faster. There are all sorts of people, especially in the great city of Los Angeles, but also in the, in the humble village of London, who make a living from the film industry. And, they don't want to suddenly be thrown out of work by a bunch of algorithms. The economics of creating content with AI are very difficult to fight. The quality is not there yet, but the improvement is exponential. And one thing I would say generally is that anytime someone says AI can't, I have this little thing go off in my head, which is, well, maybe it can't now, but what about 1 year from now? What about 5 years from now? What about 10 years from now? Will it still not be able to do that? Because usually when people say AI can't, most of the time they're going on something which is already 6 months out of date or a year out of date. But because they're not really kind of keeping up to speed with AI and how it progresses, they don't realize how fast it's changed. So AI video is just changing phenomenally quickly. A video made with Dance 2.0, which is the new, one to beat, and it's just unbelievable what you can do now compared with what you could do a month ago. And that's routinely the case. Okay, the quality's not there now, but it will be in 5 years. I mean, I think in 5 years, it's just getting so much better so fast. Don't see how it's going to be possible to beat it in 5 years, just in terms of the output. Obviously, that's a forward-looking guess, but that is my guess given the rate of progress at the moment. I must say, I was surprised that the Oscars were so open to the idea of accepting AI influence. And I think that may change back, because what I've seen over the last 3 years is that 3 years ago, there wasn't really much opposition to AI. No one really, it wasn't really a thing. My hunch is that the Academy might start to walk back some of these concessions they've been making to AI. And I would be astonished if they bring in a category for Best AI Actor, because so many of their members are physical human actors, and you better believe they do not want there to be an award for Best AI Actor. And yeah, so I think even the acceptance that we've had so far, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes away. And also if you think of a film like The Brutalist, where there was a whole controversy about this thing. It had used AI to improve the Hungarian accents of some of the talent. Maybe it would have been more supported. Maybe it would have done better.
Yeah, there's a lot of pushback, and I agree that a lot of that does boil down to the focus of individuality and sort of what makes people, unique within the entertainment industry, which is a lot of what it thrives on. And for instance, like with the award ceremonies, they have the NAACP Image Award, and then they have everything from Webbys, Tellys, to traditional EGOTs, etc. And within that, there's a whole slew of awards, and it's almost like if there's an individual tribute that people value, there's an award ceremony for that. It doesn't have to be Cannes. And so yeah, it has, and it already will continue to sort of change the dynamics for entertainment for better or worse. I can be compassionate to a lot of the concerns I think that entertainers have, because I know a lot of people who are affected by it. At the same time, I think it's very important for a lot of people in almost any industry to try and embrace it to a certain extent, at least tools. So it's here to stay, and that sums up the situation.